All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Dana Warren, and I am the Client Success Manager here at Yulio, as well as host of today's webinar. So welcome to our webinar on introducing Yulio Jump 2.0. This session will be recorded, so in case you or any members of your team want to reference it afterwards or were not able to join us today, we will be sending it out after the webinar in case anybody wants to reference it after. Okay, so here is our agenda for today. We're going to start out by briefly covering content creation, and then we're going to start out by talking about what Yulio Jump actually is, in case any of you are new to Jump. Next, we will cover the biggest changes that come with Yulio Jump 2.0, and I'll show you a live demo of how it works and also go through all of its features, including 2D perspective render, auto floor plan, and auto-generating navigational hotspots. If you do have any questions, please go ahead and type them into the question chat box there as we go. I will definitely get to all of them at the end of the webinar, of course, when we have our Q&A. Okay, so let's get started. So at Yulio, we're always trying to reduce the amount of friction you face in presenting your solutions to clients. But that's what it really is still about, creating great presentations that move your clients along the path to sales faster. I like to say that if you use images like drawings or photos or catalogs even to tell your story today, you can do it better with Yulio. But one of the stumbling blocks dealers often ask us about is content creation. So how do you create that cost and time efficient VR content? It really falls into three categories. Of course, if your own design team is overwhelmed, you can always look to third-party rendering services like our own KISP visualization team, or you can use 360 photography for low-cost capture in Yulio. We recommend that one, especially for installs, maybe progress shots or on the go, because you can capture a new space for your portfolio every time you do a delivery. But for something that doesn't exist yet, you can use CAD. And Yulio is compatible with a number of common CAD programs, and we do have plugins for SketchUp, Rhino, 3ds Max, and CET Designer. So Yulio Jump, of course, falls into that CAD category, and it was built for CET Designer and SketchUp. So what is Yulio Jump? Ever since the beginning, we knew that one of the biggest points of friction for those in the design industry is content creation and rendering, especially now that VR is becoming such a big disruptor in the best way possible in the industry. Over the years, we've seen this barrier come up time and time again because depending on how powerful your computer was, your project could take hours to finish rendering. Not to mention that the rendering process is so machine intensive, generating renders can tie up your computer for hours, making it almost impossible to work on other tasks. And for many of you, you probably have a couple Photolab experts on your team who have that kind of artistic ability and can manipulate settings like lighting or shadows for rendering. But a lot of you have probably been thinking of using disruptive technologies like VR to engage your clients on remote meetings. So we really looked at this because with content being king, it just was not fitting our adoption so well. So we thought about a couple critical things. We thought, what if we could give the designer a render button to do it all? What if we could do it in the cloud? And what if we could produce maybe like an 8 out of 10 in terms of quality with that one button? The bandwidth for producing client projects gets so much broader. And that really is where Yulio Jump comes in. So Jump is our cloud-based rendering platform, which allows you to create 360 panoramas for VR or 2D perspective renders directly from CET or SketchUp. So Yulio Jump for CET now works with native CET lighting, or you can choose to have Yulio Jump auto-apply material and lighting enhancements when rendering. So Jump will actually turn your CET design into a stunning project ready for VR, and it can automatically generate a project floor plan and those navigation hotspots for your project. And it's entirely cloud-based, which means you can continue working in CET or use your computer while the rendering is happening. Now let's talk about the new updates that Jump 2.0 is bringing, and then we will get into CET itself and actually see Yulio Jump in action. So for those of you who are Yulio Jump users and have been for a while, let's talk about the biggest changes that this update brings. And don't worry, we will go through all of this in CET again. So the two biggest updates are that the Yulio Jump rendering engine now supports CET native lighting and HDR environment mapping. The CET native lighting component means that you can now place lights into your model using the CET Lights extension, and when you render with Yulio Jump, your lights will now appear on. And that's a big update for our users because, as you all know, with our original lighting models, this was not possible. So previously, any lights that would have always been rendered as off, and now they're on. Now, I will say this lighting model will provide the most realism for your space. However, it does require basic knowledge of the CET Lights extension. But it really does bring things a long way just in terms of the overall quality of the render, and it really does make it a whole lot more realistic. Let me show you a couple examples now. I'll hop out of here. I want to show you a couple examples of the original Yulio Jump lighting model versus the new CET native lighting model in Yulio Jump. And don't forget, these are both Yulio Jump. It's just a new lighting model in the extension that's making this possible. So this sample here is actually a sample that OFS provided. And what we're looking at right now, so this space here, this is Yulio Jump before. So these are our original lighting models. So this one would have been rendered with that interior lighting model that a lot of you are probably used to using. Now let's use our scene options here at the bottom to switch over to the same space with the same view, same perspective, but rendered with Yulio Jump 2.0. So now all of your ceiling lights here are on. You have this nice ambient lighting in this one office space here. It has the HDR environment map outside the windows, so you can really see how it just totally warms the space up, and it actually brings such a realistic feel to this space. So let's go back and forth one more time. We have our Yulio Jump interior lighting model, and let's jump over to the CET native lighting model in Yulio Jump. So that is an awesome example of how it can totally transform your space and transform a project using this new lighting model for Yulio Jump. Let's take a look at another kind of smaller office example now. So here is the Yulio Jump before. So this again is the interior lighting model. And now I'm going to use my scene options and go to Yulio Jump 2.0, the same space. So again, just totally warms it up. We can see the lights on the ceiling there are on, and we have our environment map outside of the window there. And as I've kind of been referencing here, the second component, or kind of the second part of this update to Yulio Jump, is that you can now include those HDR environment maps outside of the window here. And that's done using the image-based light setting in PhotoLab. Now, this is a little bit more advanced, so we aren't going to walk through how to do this on today's webinar. However, we do have a really helpful knowledge base article on exactly how to add this if you are interested. So all you have to do is go to our knowledge base, head over to the Yulio Jump sample. And for those of you, or section, sorry, for those of you who are Yulio users in general and haven't visited our knowledge base yet, I definitely encourage you to do so. There's a lot of really great content in here, a how-to article or kind of tips and tricks for every feature in Yulio. So just a great resource in general. But for the HDR environment mapping specifically, you're going to head over to the Yulio Jump section. And then in there, we have this article that is CET native lighting and HDR environments. So this is just a helpful article in general to learn more about this new update to Yulio Jump. So this one here will walk you through kind of the new updates to the CET native lighting model within Yulio Jump, as well as how to add that HDR environment map. So a great resource there. One thing I do want to mention for those of you who are going to try out the HDR environment map is that you do need to use one of the environments that CET provides rather than uploading your own. Uploading your own will cause issues. However, there are a ton of options that CET does provide right in PhotoLab. And just note that every environment in there will affect the way that it lights your scene differently. So for example, a white snowy landscape, which is an option in there, will be a lot brighter overall than a forest landscape, for example, which is also an option in there. So we tested a bunch of these, so I definitely recommend playing around with it a little bit and test it when you are first starting out to figure out which environment is going to work the best for your space overall. So now that we've gone over kind of the biggest updates, how does that fit into Yulio Jump today in your CET extension? So the way that it all works together in the process is that now when you go to render, there's actually going to be a third lighting model option within the Yulio Jump extension called CET Native Lighting. Now, you need to use that one if you would like to use CET lights and an HDR environment map. However, if you don't want to worry about any of that and you want to stick to the original ones, you definitely can, because the interior and exterior lighting models are still available for you to use in the extension. Okay, now that we've done all of that, let's go over to CET and actually go through how Yulio Jump works and take a look at all of it in action. And I really want to talk about kind of the process itself here, starting out with what type of environment to use. So you'll notice that the space that we're using here today, it is kind of a fully finished building shell type environment. We have our 4 walls, we have a ceiling and a floor, and that really is the type of environment that Yulio Jump thrives in and the type of environment that you probably will want to use to render. And we recommend this for a couple of reasons, right? One of the reasons is because you're now rendering for virtual reality, for those full kind of 360 full walkthroughs. You have to think about what is all the way around you, kind of up, down, left, right, literally all around, because your client will be able to look fully around your space when you send them your Yulio link. So having that kind of fully finished building shell environment, it just makes it that much more realistic and immersive for your client when you have this kind of fully finished environment or a building shell that you're popping your furniture into. So that really is the type of environment that Yulio Jump was built for. So we do recommend it. Now, before we begin kind of the step-by-step for Yulio Jump and how to actually use it, let's talk a little bit about the 3 different lighting models that are available to you in the extension now, because I'm sure that's a big question on everyone's minds. So if you want to stick with the original 2 lighting models, being the interior and the exterior, you definitely can. And this would be kind of the quicker way to render. So the interior and exterior lighting models, they really do take kind of all the hard work that comes along with rendering off your hands, because with these lighting models, they take care of everything for you. So you don't have to worry about placing lights into your space. But keep in mind, with these lighting models, if you do have lights in your space, they will be ignored. So they'll be rendered as objects, but no light will be coming from them. So as a refresher, the way those 2 lighting models work is that the exterior lighting model relies on the sun to light your scene. So if your scene has a lot of windows, maybe even a skylight, that lighting model would work really well. In comparison, the interior lighting model, that one uses a special algorithm that combines sunlight with artificial ambient light to light your space. So if your scene or if your space is kind of fully enclosed or has very few windows, that lighting model will work better. Now, the third lighting model, being the CET native lighting model, again, that one does require you to place lights into your space, which, don't get me wrong, is still incredibly simple. You do need to have a ceiling, however, and then place your lights through the CET lights extension, but that's it. And again, this lighting model will look the most realistic and just have kind of that better quality overall. If you do want to use this lighting model, we do have a starting point for recommended settings in the CET lights extension, and you can find that in the same knowledge base article here. So the recommended settings are right here. However, this really is just a starting point. As you know, lighting will affect every model differently, so you may need to adjust this a bit depending on your space. And if you don't have any knowledge of CET lighting, Configura has provided us with some really great resources we can direct you to on their end if you do want training on CET lighting and how to get started. So you can find that in this article as well, I believe, right at the bottom. Oh, tricked you. It's actually in this article here. So this article here will provide some resources on how to get started with CET lighting. And it's right at the bottom, and it's, again, those CET lighting resources are coming directly from Configura if you want to get started on how to learn about lighting in CET. Okay, so now that you've thought a little bit about which lighting model you want to use, the first step that we need to take is we're going to open up PhotoLab and we're going to set our views. So opening up PhotoLab. Now, Yulio Jump can render two different types of files. It can render your 360 panorama files, which are the files that you need for your VR projects, or it can render just your regular old generic flat 2D perspective renders. So your 2D perspectives are the one here on the right, your 360 panoramas are on the left. I like to show the file differences just because sometimes users get confused when I say 2D perspective. And what I really mean by that is that's probably the type of file you've been used to rendering up to being introduced to Yulio and VR. So when I say 2D perspective, it's this one, 360 panorama, the one on the left here. So one's for VR and one's not. So Yulio Jump can actually generate both types of renders. And regardless of the type of render that you want to create, the process is the exact same. So step number one, we're still opening up PhotoLab here and we're setting our views. So essentially all we're doing really is placing cameras throughout our space that's going to make up our VR walkthrough. So all you have to do to create a new one is just hit this new button here, and then literally just drag your mouse around or your view around to set that new perspective and just place it where you like it. And then you're ready to go. Now, the main setting that Yulio Jump is going to acknowledge here is your camera elevation. And generally, we recommend that you set your camera height to about 5'6", just because that's the average height of North Americans. But you can get really creative with it. You can raise the camera height up for more of a bird's eye view. You can lower it down and place it right over top of a chair for a seated perspective. We've seen users place their camera right underneath a desk if they're trying to show off the technology behind it. So you can get really creative with it, but generally kind of your generic standing height is going to be that 5'6" marker. However, creating a view is that easy. You're literally just hitting your new button and dragging your camera to place it where you want it. And it's the same, it works the same for whether you're setting your views for your 360 panoramas or for your 2D perspectives. You're just going to hit the new button and then shift your view and adjust it how you like. Now, all you have to do here is kind of remember which views you set for which purpose. So I've already gone ahead and set most of my views here. So photo number 1, photo number 2, and I'm just pulling the photo name from the top right here. Photo number 3 and photo number 4, those are going to be my perspectives for my 360 panorama renders for my VR walkthrough. Photo number 5, this one I set to be one of my 2D perspective renders. Now, there's nothing you have to do here in PhotoLab to tell it which is which. Literally just write it down or remember it. And then all you're doing here is you're exiting out of PhotoLab. After you do that, you're going to head over here to the Yulio Jump extension and hit the Render Now button. Now, all that's happening here is PhotoLab is just going to pop open once or twice, and then it'll just exit out and go away automatically on its own. And then in a few seconds here, the Yulio Jump extension is going to open up. There we are. Okay, so in the extension here, we have a few options to play around with. So first up here, we have Render With. Now, you have two options. You have Yulio Jump or Yulio Jump Perspective. All you're doing here is you are telling Yulio Jump which type of file you would like it to create. So Yulio Jump is going to create those 360 panoramas, and it is going to send your project directly to your Yulio account and be uploaded there so you're ready to go and view your project in VR. Yulio Jump Perspective, this one is creating those 2D perspective renders. So in comparison, these files will be emailed to you because they're just your regular old kind of generic JPEG PNG images. So if you select this one, they will just be emailed to you. We will go through both. I'm just going to start out with Yulio Jump. So this one is our 360 panoramas for VR. Now, next up here, you have your lighting models to choose from. So you have your exterior, interior, and CET native. As you can see, I already have my ceiling lights turned on here, so I'm ready to go. I can use that CET native lighting model. Regardless of the way that you try to render with the lighting models, you're not going to get an error or anything like that. It will still work. But for example, if you try to use the CET native lighting model without putting lights into your model, it will not look good at all. So I don't recommend that you try it. Make sure that if you do want to use CET native lighting, you are putting lights in first. Or if you don't want to worry about placing lighting, you're using your interior or exterior lighting models. So I'm going to go ahead and select CET native lighting. Next up here, you have an option to select which folder in your Yulio account you would like the project uploaded to. You don't have to worry about this too much because you have your move function in your account, so you can always move your projects around afterwards to keep things nice and organized. And then next up here, we have photos to render. So this is speaking directly to Photolab and just pulling the photo names from Photolab where we were just looking. So I had said that I set photo 1, 2, 3, and 4 to be my 360 panoramas for VR. So those are the ones I'm going to select here. You can definitely go ahead and select your other ones that you optimized for your 2D perspective. You're not getting an error or anything like that. It might just not look as good because you set your views to be VR versus 2D. So I'm going to go ahead and select those first 4. And then next up at the bottom here, you have a couple nice enhancement options. So the first one here, add floor plan. If you check off that box, Yulio Jump is actually going to auto-generate a floor plan for you, upload it to your project, and it's going to be used for floor plan navigation. So this is really helpful because your viewers can open the floor plan, see exactly where they're standing in your space, and then select the next point they would like to travel to based on the floor plan. So they kind of know where they are at all times. And then the last one here is add navigation hotspots. So if you check off this box, Yulio Jump is actually going to auto-generate all of your navigation hotspots for you. Now, navigation hotspots in Yulio is our form of point-to-point navigation, which allows you to move from one scene to the next at the click of a button. So again, if you check that one off, all of that will be taken care of for you. So between these two features here and the Yulio Jump rendering engine, you have a project that's ready to go right after we hit this Create VR Project button, which we're going to do right now. Now, Yulio Jump is going to do a little bit of post-processing right here in CET, but then the bulk of the rendering is going to happen in the cloud. So you can actually continue to use CET, use your computer, use your Yulio account. You can run another render if you like. So you can continue to do all of that while the rendering is happening. Now, in terms of timing, we can never give accurate estimates in terms of how long your project is going to take to render, just because every project varies so much in terms of size and complexity. However, I can give you my experience with this project that we're looking at now. And I will let you know that overall, if you are using the CET native lighting model, it will take slightly longer to render than the exterior or interior lighting models. So for example, to render this project with the interior lighting model, so 4 scenes with your floor plan and your hotspots, it would take around 4 minutes to render with the interior lighting model. Now with the new CET lighting model, it might take about 7 minutes to render. And again, that's just my experience with this one project. Again, every project is going to vary so much because of the size, the complexity, the space. So that's just kind of a gauge for you for this project. So interior lighting model, 4 scenes, 4 minutes, CET native lighting model, 4 scenes, 7 minutes. So just to compare. Okay, so you can see that finished probably while I was rambling on. So let's just hit this view in Yulio button. And now, like I said, this project is going to be automatically uploaded to your account. And this page here is just going to look like this for the next few minutes until the rendering has finished. Now, again, you can continue to use your Yulio account, CET, your computer, whatever you like while this is going on, because it's all happening in the cloud. Now, of course, I do have this project pre-rendered so we can take a look at it. It's actually the sample we looked at earlier, just a little bit larger. I do want to show you a comparison here. So first of all, here's our auto-generated navigation hotspots. So we just actually click on those to activate them, and we move scene to scene. And we also have our auto-generated floor plan, so we can see where we're standing now and select the next point we would like to go to. Now, the comparison I want to show you is, maybe you even noticed there as we were switching scenes, the first scene here has that HDR environment map versus the other ones didn't. And I did it that way because I wanted to show you the difference. Now, you do not have to use the HD environment map. Yulio Jump will compensate if you don't. It's just kind of like an extra add-on kind of feature that you can add to your render with CET and Yulio Jump. So you can see here, photo number 1 has the environment outside of the windows. This is maybe a better view. And you can see the lighting on the floor from the windows. So again, that's just kind of adding the extra realism using that CET native lighting model. Let's go to one of our other views where the background is not added. So essentially it just creates like a gray space outside the windows if you do not use that environment. So you can definitely do it both ways, just showing you kind of the comparison. What we'll do now is let's jump back to CET and let's take a look at how to run our 2D perspective renders. So again, it's the same process. We already opened up Photolab and set our view. You can go back into Photolab at any time and add additional views. After you have done that, same thing, we're just going back to our Yulio Jump extension and we're going to hit the Render Now button again. Same thing, Photolab will pop open once or twice before it closes again, and the actual Yulio Jump extension will come up. There we go. Okay, so this time, next to render with, instead of doing Yulio Jump, we're going to select Yulio Jump Perspective. And again, these are our 2D perspective images, so these files will be emailed to us. We're going to stick with the CET native lighting model. And then I had said that photo number 5 was my view for my 2D perspective, so I'm just gonna go ahead and select that one. We do not have the enhancement options here for floor plan or navigation hotspots because this time we're not creating our VR project, it's just our 2D perspective image. And I'm just gonna go ahead and select Create VR Project. Same thing, it'll do a little bit of post-processing here, but then the bulk of the rendering is going to happen in the cloud, and then in a couple minutes, you'll receive your email with the project file attached. And just to show you a couple samples of what those 2D perspectives look like, I do have a few pre-rendered. So again, you can see your ceiling lights there. Another view with the environment map outside of the window if you do choose to add that. So you can really see with this new update to Yulio Jump and kind of the compatibility with CET lighting and the new CET native lighting model in Yulio Jump, how far it really brings things kind of in terms of quality. And it's still incredibly simple to use. You just have to make sure you do add your lights using the CET Lights extension, and then you're good to go. Okay, so now just before we get to questions, for those of you who are maybe brand new to Yulio and you don't have a Yulio license yet, feel free to reach out to my colleague Steven and he will be able to talk to you more about Yulio Jump and also talk to you about maybe plans available. If you are already a Yulio user, please feel free to reach out to myself. Both of our information is on screen there, so you can get it. And then again, I will be sending out a follow-up email, so please feel free to reach out to me. If you don't have any questions that maybe come up today, feel free to reach out to me at any point with any questions if you want to chat through Yulio Jump again or go through kind of any aspects of it. Of course, I'm always happy to do that. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you do have any questions or want to go through anything outside of the webinar. But thank you so much for joining us today to go over kind of the new updates and changes to Yulio Jump and see how it works and integrates with the original version. If anybody has any questions, please go ahead and type them into the chat box now. I will stick around here for a few minutes and answer those. If you do have to head out now, thank you so much for joining us today, and we will see you next time. Okay, so we have a question here. I'm in CET, but I can't actually see the new lighting model. So you do have to make sure that you update CET. So if you're in CET right now, sorry, not update CET, you have to update the Yulio Jump extension. So if you're in CET right now and you open the Yulio Jump extension, but you only have the two original lighting models, just make sure you go and check for updates because there will be one for Yulio Jump. And then as soon as you update it, the new lighting model will be there for you to use. Okay, we have a question here about Yulio Jump for SketchUp. So I know we focused on today's webinar about CET. So these new updates do only apply to CET because it included that update for CET native lighting. However, for Yulio Jump for SketchUp, you can add enhancements using material tags. So again, we have a knowledge base article on that as well in our knowledge base under the Yulio Jump section. But as of today, we do still only have the interior and exterior lighting model functions for SketchUp. So the 2.0 update applied to Yulio Jump for CET using CET native lighting. Again, keep checking back or I can reach out to you. I have your name here for any updates that are kind of planned for SketchUp or kind of where the SketchUp for Yulio Jump for SketchUp plugin is going. We have feedback here that you are excited to use it, so I love to hear that. Again, I will stick around here and answer any more questions if anybody has them. We will send out the recording either this afternoon or tomorrow morning. If anybody wasn't able to attend and they want to learn about the new updates, And then, like I said, if you don't have a plan yet, you want to learn more, you can contact my colleague Steven. Let me put his information back up here. Or if you are already a user, you want to kind of chat through the new update to Yulio Jump more or go through it again, you can reach out to myself there. All right, everyone, I am going to sign off. I do always find that the questions come when you actually start to use it in action. So when that does come, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, like I said. And again, thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.